What you see, what Red Bull did is they become a media company.
Welcome to the first episode of Memorable Marketing by Media Group. My name is Thomas May, I'm the host, and I'm interviewing Bart Berggraaf today. Full disclosure, Bart is a business partner in Media Group, and I work for Bart, so I better behave and be on my best terms when I interview him. So just put that in perspective.
Starting off by pronouncing my name in the proper Dutch way, Thomas.
Okay, Berggraaf is how you say it in Dutch.
It's a valiant effort. Let's move right along.
How do you say it in the correct Dutch way?
Oof, pressure. Berggraaf.
Berggraaf. Okay, there you go. So, as a listener can hear, you're Dutch, but you live in Hong Kong. Tell me more about that. What is a Dutchman doing in Hong Kong?
Sure, yeah, that's a good question. I've always moved around a bit. I've lived in 7 countries in the last 15 years or so. Moved out of university to Denmark, to London, Poland, Spain, then Switzerland. And in the end, I ended up here in Hong Kong. The reason I moved to Hong Kong is we had an office here. The person managing it at the time wanted to do something else. And so as the company gypsy, so to speak, I decided it would be a good idea to pack everything up and move over here. It's been a very good decision. Generally, I hadn't spent much time in Asia. I think economically, but also just on a much more, how would you say, practical or day-to-day basis. Asia is really where things are happening. You see that with your own eyes every day, basically.
How do you see it's happening every day?
Yeah, this is where all the building is happening. This is where all the investment is happening. This is where the exciting stuff now in terms of tech is happening. If we just think about China for a moment, it used to be the Samsung of the countries in the world, in that they would copy everything that Apple is doing and just try to be marginally cheaper. But now you see a lot of the innovation actually happening here. Also, in terms of just economic prospects, the GDP growth is really here in Asia. And so from that perspective, it's all very positive. I also think that, what follows from that logically is the marketing spend by a lot of international companies. And so what we do in here is, besides the local regional companies, a lot of European, Western in general, companies that we do business with have shifted their focus to marketing spend in Asia.
Yeah.
And so we're managing that from here. Among a lot of other benefits, tax related, people availability, things of that nature. It's just a very big market for us.
As a listener can listen to, my accent is Danish and you are Dutch, so this is going to be a nice conversation in our broken English, both of us. We're here to talk about the art of marketing strategy. So let's presume for a second that I'm a new CMO. I've just gotten a job at a company and I'm just rolling into this role. So what do I do as a new CMO? If you are the CMO, as a Chief Marketing Officer, what is the first step that you do in terms of getting started in your new job? Let's talk about marketing strategy.
Yeah. Begin at the beginning. That's really, how we're approaching it.
Okay.
I would say the number one thing to do is just research. Getting to know your company, of course, in extreme detail. And just to say that that's not just like an administrative thing or even just about doing a good job in your role or what is expected, but also this is where a lot of the marketing ideas later will flow from. To give a weird example, Lucky Strike, the cigarette company, have ran with It's Toasted, what's it called, payoff or slogan for many decades, and this is a part of the production process that every cigarette manufacturer was doing. They all toasted. It's just that someone was detailed and smart enough to do really research about how these things are produced and figure out a part of it that was not widely known and put it to the forefront. So I would say Besides all the other things, all the other reasons why you should do research, the simple fact that you will later be able to communicate some of these things, some of the unexpected angles, is very important. So again, besides this, you do research about your target audience, about your customer base.
Yes.
You do research about your competitors. You do research about attitudes towards your product, towards your company. You segment the market. You look at where you're strong, where you're weak. You look at the customer life cycle. So there are a few standardized customer life cycles. So that starts with sort of awareness, interest, preference, conversion, loyalty, and so on. But a lot of companies have their own cycles, and you can define it however you want. The key is here to set up a good number of touch points that you will have with the customer.
Okay.
So it's very important that they are quantitative, not necessarily qualitative. And you set KPIs for each, or not KPIs, but you set to begin with the baseline.
Okay.
And then you can really look at where is my problem, right? So because if you see that the awareness of your product is very high, consideration is high, but then not a lot of people actually purchase your product in the end, you know that there's a problem at that stage, and you need to take specific actions.
Okay, so
if the whole pipeline looks good, but your awareness is very low, you need to create awareness in the market, and from that follows a lot of the other things.
So step first is just to research, find out who your customers are, find out what your product is in the marketplace, and then find out, then once you've done that and doing that research, you find out the awareness. Is my product, does people know about my product? How high is it on awareness level? And if it's very high and people are not buying, then you have a problem. But if it's a very low awareness, we start looking at creating an awareness campaign. Is that what you're mentioning now?
Yeah, so this is one example, but also figure out a situation where your repeat purchases are very low. So that's going to require a very different type of marketing effort than other situations. So start there. Then you start to think about your product and the 4 P's: pricing, place, promotion. What was the other one? Figure out, how does this compare to competitors? How does this align with the goal that I've set for my marketing? How does this align with the positioning that I have chosen for my product, and so on? So it's really research, both qualitative and quantitative, making some targeting and positioning decisions, and then really starting a strategic process of planning both the creative campaigns, the briefs for your partners, and media, and so on.
And so right now, we're talking more theoretical. Yeah. Do you have any examples you can give for companies you work with where you go in and you started this process, so we can talk about real life examples?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so this is I'll try to keep it a little bit anonymous, but there are some B2B customers where at a certain point they were getting in a lot of leads, but not necessarily converting a lot of those leads. And so it turns out that the salespeople that were in charge of converting those leads were actually a little bit overwhelmed, and we're getting a lot of poor quality leads. Now, every salesperson in the world will tell you that they get poor quality leads. They all want to just call someone that is going to sign the contract as soon as they pick up the phone.
Yes.
But that being said, in this case, there was a real problem. And so instead of trying to do marketing or advertising in a better way, we decided to focus on the marketing automation side of things and really qualify a lead before it goes to sales.
Okay.
And really prioritize who they're going to talk to.
All right, so let's talk about this qualification process. So they're getting this company, can't mention right now, but they have a lot of leads coming in, but it's of a questionable quality. How does one go about how do you qualify the leads before they come in so that you can funnel them? What do you do? What's the steps?
Yeah, so it will vary according to the company, of course. But in most cases, what you want to do is get them closer to that purchase or repeat purchase, right? So whatever steps they will need to go through will need to be mapped out. So this is also where that research came in with the various stages.
Yeah.
If you make that as granular as possible. But let's take a trading company, like an online trading company as an example.
Yeah.
In the case of an online trading company, the end goal is really for people to deposit and then to put on their first trade, and then they're an active customer of that company.
Yes.
But to get there, they need to go through an application process. They need to send in their documents. They need to check out your platform. So, for instance, take a demo of your platform, things of that nature. Maybe they need to speak to a salesperson and so on. So all these steps you map out.
Yeah,
and then you figure out what you need to do to get them one step closer every time.
Okay, and so the first examples you're saying they have to fill out some paperwork. That's because you have to use this know your customer. You need to know who is trading on your platform. So that's more of a government regulations. But the second part is
even there, Thomas. Yeah. There's something to be done. I mean, there's a difference between filling out a PDF that you need to print out and scan and so on, and an online process that is fast and easy.
Correct.
And that is being and while you're having live help on the chat box at the same time, or on the phone or whatever. So I mean, there's still a lot to be done there.
Okay, so you're hand-holding, you're helping the potential new customer all the way through, because you want to, once the customer start that process, you want that customer to follow through all the way through, because you need those credit card details so you can get that deposit so they can start. So you can help in that onboarding process already at the PDF level, the application level. I like that. Okay, that's good.
In fact, you hit on a key point there. It's about hand-holding. In other words, don't make me think. If I'm a customer, don't make me think. Yeah. Whenever I have to spend mental energy or other types of energy, it causes drop-off. Yeah. I have to do my laundry. I have a meeting in half an hour. I have to think about a million things.
Yes.
I don't want to have to consider what documents you told me in the first step I need to submit. I want you to lay it out like I'm an idiot, basically, so that I can spend as little effort as possible.
Of course, and also if people get confused, if they're confused, why would they sign up? So it's a matter of making that process as friendly and as human, possibly with a chat person, as you mentioned, to secure that, make sure there's not that high drop-off, that someone is holding their hand all the way through. Okay. So we got that process down. We do that on the on this trading platform we're talking about. And the next step is once they fill out that paperwork, which is then there is a sales training call. How do you get to know the platform? So this is from the user interface. This is the customer experience we're talking about now.
So I mean, there are a couple of possibilities, but let's say in this hypothetical example that the flow is that they apply first, and then you have to train on the platform.
Yeah.
Then you can make a decision to have this hands off and just make a tutorial video. You can do a webinar that you schedule for multiple customers at once, but perhaps the most impactful would be for a salesperson to call you one-on-one, share their screen, and walk you through it, or even in person. So, I mean, there's a cost attached to this that you need to see if it's worth it. So let's say that my drop off from the moment that I've been approved as an account to actually learning to trade on the platform is very high. Let's say it is 50%, and that 50% represents a certain amount of cost, and that cost you need to put against what it would cost to to take the manual effort of walking people through it, what that salesperson would cost, and so on.
Yeah.
So there's always an ROI calculation to be made.
Yeah.
My personal opinion is that in almost all cases, it's best to involve more humans than to automate. So make everything as easy as possible, as self-serve as possible. But when people want help or when you see some problem, just get humans involved. Don't try to automate your problems away.
Okay. But as a client, let's say I'm running this trading platform that we are potentially talking about. I have cost I've done all the research. I have to go out and find out and understand my market, my competitors, and have to understand who my customers are. Then I spend money on that. I spend money on acquiring. So these leads are coming in. I'm advertising on, I don't know, Facebook or Google or wherever it might be. And so I'm having some cost with that. And now you're saying we should also have some human elements cost, which of course increases the cost. Once you've done that, they have the training, then hopefully they put down a credit card, they deposit it $500, $100, whatever the minimum amount is, and then they start. How do you make sure that the customer stays? Because now we spent all the money, as I mentioned before. How do we make sure, what can one do from a marketing point of view or from a company point of view to make them stay longer inside the company?
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, you need to have your finger on the dial, and this is why the numbers and mapping down that customer life cycle is so important.
Yeah.
Because you need to have really a close to real-time dashboard that shows you all of those numbers, so that you can see if there's a big drop-off and take corrective action right away. That being said, the best way to keep a customer is to be unexpectedly good to them.
Unexpectedly good,
so
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And is that checking in with them, not just through emails, but talk to them, or what's your strategy there?
I know there was an interesting example of a company that we used to work with that sent a birthday cake to their customers every year. When is the last time that a company sent you something physical to begin with, and let alone a birthday cake? I thought that was wonderful.
Yeah.
But it's not just that. It's little touches, yes. Yeah. And of course, you should just try to bribe your customers as much as possible to stay with you and to like you.
Yeah.
People like to do business with friends. And so
that's true.
What does a friend do? But it's also just doing the basics right. People don't like to have the feeling that they're getting screwed, obviously. So you want to make sure that you're offering a fair and good service to them, and that you don't forget all about them. So it is about checking in. But even in business cases where you have too many customers to check in with them, you can automate certain things that will make you seem thoughtful. And I think that's a good approach.
It's funny you mentioned that with the birthday cakes. I used to be a film sales agent, and I would travel a lot. And we used this travel agencies, and I would buy tickets all the time. And on my birthday, I was on a plane going from Copenhagen to Chicago, New York, I don't know, somewhere. And then they came down, they gave me a birthday cake. I was the only one on the plane who got a birthday cake, and it was made just for me. And I mean, to this day, this is 10, 15 years ago, I still remember that. So yeah, you're right. A birthday cake really, really works. They went above and beyond to make sure there was a birthday cake on the plane that was given to me at my seat, at the envy and jealousy of every other passenger on the plane, of course, because I was the only one who got it. But it just goes out of the way to show that touch. And of course, I stayed even longer with that travel agency because they took good care of me and I took good care of them. So you're right. Dealing business with friends, that's a good mindset. I like that. Just want to share that little personal story from Scandinavian Airlines.
And you're still telling people about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is the wonderful thing about delighting your customer base, like doing things that are unexpected in a positive way, which is that they tell other people about it.
Yeah.
And our brains are really, this is very fundamental. Our brains are made to ignore sane and notice difference.
Yes.
So, our brains are this giant filtering machine that take all of this input from the world around you and put on autopilot everything that is the same so that you can function in the world.
Yes.
So if you take this on an extreme basis, this is what happens with your customer base, your brand, and so on too. You need to be noticed for people people need to give you their attention in order to bring across the message or to get them to do what you want them to do.
Exactly.
And so just being different is a goal in itself for a marketing person.
It's funny you mentioned this thing with the brain, and there's a scientific term for it. I can't remember on top of my head what it's called right now. I'm sure somebody else who's listening to this can let us know. But when you're shopping for a new car or a new pair of shoes or a new bag or pair of jeans, they were always there, but you didn't see it because you told your brain to be on autopilot. Like 98% of all the signals we get on a daily basis, we just tune out because there's too much. Our brain would melt because we couldn't handle it. But because now suddenly we're shopping for that car, for those shoes, or suddenly you see it everywhere. It was there all along, but your brain said, "Hey, you're looking for this. There it is. There it is. There it is." Which is an amazing, just funny. Just want to share that.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it is, and that's very applicable. I think it's called something like the red car syndrome or something like this. Like you buy a red car, there's red cars everywhere.
Yes, they were there before. You just didn't notice them because you were going on your autopilot. Okay. So now we've got the trading platform up. We got the customer in. The customer started trading. We trained the customer. We gave him a birthday cake or her the birthday cake on their birthday. How do we grow and how do we expand? What do we do to grow the company to get more people in like that?
Sure. So you should see your whole customer lifecycle as a funnel.
Yeah. Okay.
And so you put people on top, and at the bottom you have loyal customers,
yes.
Right? And so once you've identified where in that funnel is the bottleneck, you can expand that part of the funnel so that it can flow through much more easily.
Okay, so how do you expand the bottom of the funnel to make it wider? What do you do to do that?
So it's not necessarily about just the bottom of the funnel. It's just to identify where in this funnel is the bottleneck. So let's say that people are aware of your company, and they convert at a decent pace, but at a certain stage in the middle, they're leaving you off their preferred list. So people, I know people don't make decisions this way about many subjects. It's just certain things, but just for the theoretical framework to say, at the top of the funnel, you are aware of, let's say, 20 companies let's say 10 companies in a certain industry, right? You've heard their name and you know vaguely what they do. Then if you are interested in actually starting to make a purchase or think about making a purchase in this industry, you narrow down your list to a small subset, to a short list.
Yes.
And then in the end, you will actually pick one of them. So let's say that your company has a lot of people that are aware of you on a basic level, but people are not picking you compared to competitors. Well, in that case, you have a preference problem. So really, you need to educate your target audience as to your positioning, your unique, not unique selling point necessarily, but like sort of the reason why they should pick you. So then it's not a question of fame, of knowledge about your brand, and it's not a question of actually making it easy to purchase. It's a matter of convincing people with either emotional or factual reasons why they should buy you. And so then okay, this is the problem. I'm going to go out and do a campaign to everyone that is aware of me with a very strong positioning that juxtapositions our brand against others, or takes a corner of the market that is very clear and easily defined. And I'm going to communicate that in a very effective way. So, then you have sort of the strategy, the creative strategy behind it. Then you need to go out and make some decisions about how you're going to communicate this to the world, right? So you can have the best ad in the world if you don't put it out there for people to see. Well, let's switch gears a bit and pretend like we're Coca-Cola.
Okay, thank you.
Right?
Yeah.
So Coca-Cola has the one of the biggest awarenesses in the world.
Yeah.
Some people might still prefer Pepsi because it's actually sweeter. So how do you go out and advertise to people that are aware of you, that have considered you, but decide to go with a competitor? Well, let's leave the creative strategy aside. But you could think about point of sale. That's an important one where people make a decision. But people have probably already before that made up their mind about what they're going to grab, right? So you want um, to consider a few different media channels, such as sponsorships, such as
well, there's certainly
things that are perhaps a little bit more shaping of people's preference than
yes,
rather than just slapping on a logo.
exactly. So talking about that example, Coca-Cola and Pepsi, it's funny you mentioned those two, but there's an Austrian company, small one called Red Bull, that has certainly taken a lot of market share away from both Pepsi and Coca-Cola for many years by doing exactly that, by having a lot of advertising and having their brand associated with extreme sports or skiing or snowboarding or surfing and all the other stuff, all the events that they sponsor. So that's definitely how they've come into the market, and then they've certainly become a big player in that way. But how does Coca-Cola, being the older company, and Red Bull being this upstart company, how does, besides buying the company or creating their own products might be the way to, how does Coca-Cola compete with that?
Well, I'm very glad. Thank you for bringing up Red Bull. I think that's exactly the key here. So what you see, what Red Bull did is they become a media company.
Yes.
They are no longer an advertiser or a beverage manufacturer. They are a media company.
Yes.
So they sponsor extreme sports, things that are interesting, adventurous, and then they package it in different ways, and distribute it in a lot of different channels. They have their own TV station. They post things on social media. They create events for people to go to, and so on. It's the same way for one of our customers, Breitling. So Breitling, the watch manufacturer, it's luxury watches. They do a lot of advertising to create awareness and to have the right positioning and so on. But they also do air shows. They have racing airplanes
Yes.
that they sponsor,
Yeah.
and they create a piece of content. And this is really how you create attachment. I mean, there are lots of different ways, but I would just say that if awareness is just creating awareness, then the next stage in there is create a preference, and you do that by doing things that are perhaps more closely aligned to what you stand for, what your position is, and so on.
Exactly. But where Red Bull or Coca-Cola is for some people, it's an everyday consumer product. I don't drink it personally, but where Breitling is something you buy every 5, 10, 20 years, maybe. It might be a watch you have for the rest of your life. So how do you influence that? Whereas there's a huge market for sodas every day, whether it's Coke, Pepsi, or Red Bull, as opposed to Breitling, which is competing in a space with Rolex and I mentioned lots of other high-end watches which cost a lot of money. How do you the events leading up to doing that? Was Red Bull is doing so well. They have the Formula One. They've got some football teams which are doing pretty well in Europe, in Germany and Austria. I think they are. How do you position yourself when you have to be there at that moment when the buyer is ready? How do you position yourself to be there when the buyer is ready? Is that where you talked earlier about qualifying the leads?
So this is the next step. So there's the awareness step, then there's the preference step, and there's the conversion step.
Correct.
And conversion is really about being there when the customer is ready to buy.
Yeah.
So in the example of a luxury watch company, if they're ready to make a decision and say buy Breitling now, and that's not the right keyword, but let's just say for this example, then they can get redirected to a competitor that has advertised on that keyword, and gives you at the very last moment some very good reasons why you should buy their product instead. There's a name for this tactic. It's called conquesting. That aside, the Breitling just missed an opportunity. But also think about things like, are they directed to gray market sellers that erode the brand value and sell at a lower price, or are they directed to official channels and boutiques and things of that nature? Also think about upselling. So someone might be convinced to buy a cheaper bridling or a more expensive bridling watch.
Yeah.
So all of that comes into consideration. They also might throw their hands up in disgust because they cannot buy the product that they wanted to give up and start searching for Rolex.
Yeah.
So again, it's about making it available and making it easy.
So we talked about trading platform. We talked about you being a new CMO. We talked about Coca-Cola. We talked about Breitling, and we talked about positioning. Let's talk about advertising. Let's talk about how do you do that positioning there, advertising.
Yeah. So, I mean, just to leave the creative side out of it, there are 1,000,001 different ways in which a brand can advertise their brand or their products, right? There's so many choices. How do you plan the media in the right way? How do you reach your audience in the right way? So first of all, there's something about what is the media consumption of the target audience. But then again, every audience can be found in every media. I mean, I still sometimes listen to radio, internet radio. I consume media in 100 different ways. Yeah. So again, you really have to think about what media channel am I going to pick. It shouldn't be that you work with an agency or you have a media guy in your company that knows Facebook very well, so you're going to go with Facebook. Like, it should be a strategic decision. Which channels are you going to go with? Where can your audience be found, and so on. And I think very old saying is the media is the message, and it is definitely to a certain extent still the case. So a very important part of the effective advertising is the fame that you build up, the awareness that other people see the same thing that you do, and the long-term effect of lodging your brand into the brains of people. And that effect cannot be created online, not effectively. So if you're after awareness, if you're after making something real, if you're after creating fame, then your best bet is probably going to be offline advertising. TV is still a very good bet. There's radio, there's a bunch of other things. That being said, if your goal is awareness and you're an online company, then you can do things that are more impactful. Like, you could take over an entire site, and people know that costs a lot of money. That will create something in itself. You can do video advertising, which is shown to have some long-term effects and brand building and so on. So I would say the first thing that you have to consider is, like, what is my goal here? Is it awareness or preference or conversion, things of that nature? Then you're going to look for media, narrow it down a little bit. Secondly, what does your target audience consume? Where do they spend most of their time? Thirdly, how's your product consumed? So it will make much more sense for an online company to do conversion advertising online than to do it through a billboard, right? Whereas if you're, just a silly example, a retail shop, you will probably want to just direct foot traffic.
Of course, in a local area.
Shop.
Yeah. Yes.
So that's a consideration too. So when you take all of that together, you can narrow down your media choices a lot. And of course, well, let me just say that the beauty of recent decades is that online advertising has really made it very possible, or technology in general has made it very possible, to precisely measure where people come from, to attribute the right credit to the right channel. Yeah. And this is why online advertising has exploded in popularity, because it's something that can be very easily explained to your top management. You can say, if I do this, then I get this.
Yes.
Whereas with other channels, it will be more difficult.
Yes, but also with online, with a Facebook or Google, you can measure it right away. You can see the result. You can see a customer coming in, and you can see whether that customer end up buying. Whereas a newspaper ad or radio spot or TV, there will be an effect, but you can't measure each individual. There'll be an overall effect, whereas it's much more measurable in terms of the online advertising, and you can then go in and figure out the journey of each person coming through that way. That makes it easier, no?
It does make it easier, and that's really been wonderful for the advertising industry that this whole world now exists. And I think not only has it made online advertising more effective, but it's also made offline advertising more effective to to have all this technology available and to have that mindset about it, this direct marketing mindset to everything that you do. While online is not always the right choice, it does offer the most scalable, the most measurable way of advertising. And so it has done wonders for a lot of businesses.
Okay, and the channels that we use through our agency is, of course, SEO. It's Facebook. It's Google. It's a PPC, of course, and display. Starting out, going back to being a CMO, is there one you should choose before the others, or should you have a mixed strategy of all of them? Where do you put your money, so to speak, or your focus? What do you do? Do you go for all of them, or do you go for one of them to start with?
Right. Yeah. So you're right that our focus is mostly online, although we do a fair bit of offline as well. I think the mix will really have to depend on the goal of the campaign, of the customer, of the brand, and so on. And so it's hard to say exactly what, but it is very clear that the best results are achieved in cross-channel advertising. So no brand should start off by saying we're just going to do Facebook advertising, or we're just going to be doing PPC or whatever. There's just no reason. Even if you see that the results of one channel are better than another, that does not mean you should take away all of the budget from the one that's slightly underperforming and put it into the one that's performing better, because they work together in synergy.
Okay, because of the awareness of people spotting several places, like we talked about earlier, that you're not seeing the brand showing up different places. So even though I'm spending more money per acquisition on, let's say, Google Apps, as opposed to, Facebook or Instagram or whatever it might be these days, TikTok, you still feel that a CMO should spread his or her marketing budget across multiple channels. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, in most cases, yes. Of course, there is if you have a very low budget, and probably you want to concentrate a little bit more, not to have too much overhead. But in normal cases, you should spread your budget across different channels to get learnings from each, to have a way to make everything scalable, for it to work together, to have that synergy of higher overall results by being in multiple places and doing multiple things. That being said, because of privacy, because of competition, because of a lot of different reasons, besides advertising, we feel that SEO is a very important aspect.
Let's talk about that. Some people say that SEO doesn't work, or you shouldn't trust people trying to sell it. And other people say it absolutely works. It's amazing. There's a lot of different myths and stories and opinions out there about SEO. What's your take on SEO?
So this industry, like many other things, has been kind of ruined by cowboys. And there are a lot of agencies that are cold calling small businesses, especially, and saying, do you want to be on the first page of Google? Don't pay anything unless you're on the first page, blah, blah, blah. And then really just doing a very poor job, not investing anything in link building, just changing some text around. And it's gotten a bad name because of those sort of cowboys. Okay. The other thing is that everyone has heard, especially back in the day, somewhere that some company, some brand got delisted, that they got into trouble because they did some illegal things. Yeah. And so BMW was a good example of that. In the early beginning, they hired someone, and that they did some rather tricky things, like showing one thing to the search engine, showing something else to
they're trying to trick the search
users.
Engine. Yeah. Okay.
And they got delisted for a while. Now, I personally haven't heard of any such stories for a long time. You can run into some problems, and definitely you can have thrown away a lot of money. But Google has to optimize their anti-SEO algorithms for edge cases. So I'll give you an example. Sorry if that sounds a bit theoretical, but I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm the blue widget company, and I really want to compete with the red widget company.
Yeah.
And I know that Google is going to penalize their website if they do some bad stuff in SEO.
Got it.
What will I do? I will just do some bad stuff in SEO to their website. I will report it to Google, and no more competitive. This is not just a theoretical thing. There's a whole field of people that do this sort of thing. Yeah. And so Google needs to make sure that people don't get penalized for the behavior of other companies. So they need to be really careful in the things that they apply for 101 reasons. So first of all, there's not a lot of risk if you do things in a proper way. There's not a lot of risk of Google catching you and delisting you or whatever. The worst that can happen is that those links don't count anymore, or you'll get some warnings, things of that nature.
Yeah.
So what we do, which is different from other agencies, is that we actually build links at scale. Other agencies might make some changes on their website and some content. We actually build a ton of links to websites, which quality niche links that actually make your site rank higher. It's not enough, especially in competitive industries, to make some changes to your website content. And so we obviously do both. But this is really where it becomes scalable by building links.
Okay, so the linking. So can you talk to me about linking when you say quality links? So yes, one thing is to make sure everything can be found on the website and the titles and all that stuff that needs to be done to the actual site. But this linking where we spend a lot of time building these quality links. Can you go more details about that?
So there are let's call it two major areas of SEO, like what happens on your site and what happens off your site.
Okay.
And both of them are signals to Google what your site is about, how important your site is. And so they determine what your site is about by what is on your site, like the content.
Correct.
And if there are technical issues with your website that would stop Google and other search engines, same goes for Baidu and others, if it would stop due to technical issues that a search engine from discovering what your website is about, that means that they're not going to know it, and so that you won't rank it again. So it's very important that you have both the technical and the content things on your website in order. But once that's there, how does Google determine who is an important site and who isn't, right? How would they know that?
Exactly.
Well, what they did is they took a page from academic research. So the way that the academic researchers are judged on average is by how many citations they've gotten, how many other research refers to your research. And so it's the exact same way with websites. How many people refer to your website, and how important are the people that refer to your website? So if in academic research, Nature or Science or any of those type of important journals would refer to your paper, it probably is a good signal that your paper is very important. In the same way, if CNN.com or Bloomberg.com or any important site refers to your website, it gives them a link, that probably means that content is very important.
Yeah.
So Google or Baidu or whatever, they take the signal, what is your content about? And they take the signal, how important is that content? They put it together, and this is how they determine what is the order of the search results and for what queries do you show up. And so the way to optimize or even gain this is by making sure that your content is on point, that you have the right things in your website, and by getting those citations to your website from important sites. Nice. And that's what we do.
Okay. And so from a industry point of view, two competitors, they have to suddenly outspend each other. If you're not spending any money in SEO, you're going to lag behind, because there are companies now that are spending a lot of money on SEO. And so if you are in an industry that's very competitive and you're not paying attention to SEO, you will not appear as much in the search rankings as the ones who do spend money on SEO. Is that what you're finding when you're talking to clients who come in and who needs help with SEO?
Yeah, in a lot of cases, it's an arms race for very competitive industries. But let's just say, for instance, in the B2B space, where less companies are focusing on doing SEO work, there's still a ton of value to be had. Like an example, one of our clients is a robotics automation company. They make robot arms, and they could rank for their brand name. They could rank for their product names, but in normal cases, they wouldn't always necessarily rank. Ranking means like how high you are in search results.
Yep.
They wouldn't necessarily always rank for more wider terms, like robotic automation. And so by ensuring that the website content is speaking about this, and by ensuring that there are links going to their site, you give a signal that actually this website should be ranking for that, and they can get a lot of business in this manner by just being a little bit wider than you would normally be.
And so, speaking of this robotic company that we're currently working with, so by using all these backlink articles has improved their ranking, have improved the search capability of finding this. If you're in the market for a robot arm for your factory or for your automation process, you are out there. It takes a while to do some research. So the higher you can perform, the better it is for them to be found that way. And therefore, it's more qualified leads. Is that correct?
Right. So, I mean, as with anything, the devil is in the details. So in B2B in general, there's a very long sales cycle. Exactly how long it is depends on the industry.
Yeah.
But especially when you have a very long sales cycle, you want to be found at every stage of the purchase process, right? You want to get people that are just doing their initial research, or that are just generally interested in the industry, and you want to find people that want to buy your product now.
Obviously,
and so making this strategy, this keyword strategy for SEO, is just as important as making a strategy for your overall marketing and figuring out where the problem is, where do people need to find you, and so on.
That makes total sense. And with those last words, I think it's time to wrap up this first podcast.